Okay, so you should have a file that looks like this. So let's just go ahead and update a couple of the formatting elements as well as to start doing some calculations. The first thing I want to do is I want to change the name of the sheet. So it's called sheet one. If you only have a workbook with one sheet, that's not a big issue. But if you've got a workbook that has 10 sheets, having each one named sheet one, sheet two, sheet three, all the way up to sheet 10, is not going to be very helpful if you're trying to figure out what data is on each individual sheet. So it's a good practice to always update the name of your worksheet to reflect the data that's actually contained on that sheet. So the way to do this is double click on the tab, so to highlight the text, and then just simply type what you want to type. I'm going to call this Jonathan's store, and then hit the return key, and there I go. I renamed the sheet. Okay. By the way, let me show you something else. If you right click on the tab, you can actually update the tab color. Let's select purple. Okay, that's just useful if you've got a color scheme that you want to use. Let's again say you've got 10 different tabs, and you have some sort of color scheme that you want to use to make it easier to understand what's in the tabs. You can use tab color. Okay. Another thing I want to fix is up here in A1, Jonathan Store. You'll notice the word store is cut off because in B1 I have the word items there. Okay. If I took out that word, I can see the whole thing, but once I put in items, it cuts that off. Okay, so I want all of Jonathan's store to appear. Okay, a couple different ways to do this. One way is to use what's called wrap text. So go ahead, click in A1 on the home menu ribbon. There's this button right here that's called wrap text. Go ahead, click on that. What that does is it moves the text to the next line so that I can see everything in the cell. Okay, Jonathan store. Notice in the formula bar, it didn't move store to another line. Okay, the data itself remains the same. It's just for display purposes. It's showing this on 2 lines. Okay, so that's one way I can do this. I'm going to show you a different way. So let's go ahead and undo this action. There's an undo button up here. Go ahead, click undo. Okay, another way I can do this is I can change the column widths using what's called auto fit. Okay, so go ahead, select columns A, B, C, and D. So just drag across those. And if you hover between any of the 2 columns, you'll see the little plus sign, double click, and it auto fits the columns. Okay, what auto fitting does is it's just auto fitting the columns so that they're as wide as needed for whatever data is currently in that column. Okay, and now I can see Jonathan's store completely. Now, I actually do want Jonathan's store. I want the word store to be on the next line. And so if I clicked right now on wrap text, it's not moving it to the next line. Let me click undo that. Okay, so I can actually manually move store to the next line. If you click up in the formula bar right before the S in store, it is option return, and then hit return. And what that just did is it moved store to the next line. Now, if I click back in A1 in the formula bar, it looks like only Jonathan's is there. Actually, if you come over here to the little drop-down arrow, it expands, and you can see that it actually manually moved the word store to another line. Okay, this little arrow allows you to expand and collapse the formula bar. Okay, so if you ever need to move something to the next line in the formula bar, it is option return. Okay. So I like that. I do want all of my columns to be the same width. So again, I'm going to select columns A, B, C, and D. And let's go ahead and change the column width. A couple different ways to do this. One way is you come over here to the editing section of the home menu ribbon. And I'm sorry, it's not editing. It's under the cell section format. We want column width. Okay. And let's change this to a column width of 10. Okay. Let's change that to 10. So now they're all the same width. Now they're all the same width. They're all 10. Okay. By the way, you can also adjust the row heights. So let's select rows 2 through 6. Over here to format, row height. Let's change this to 18. Let's just kind of add a little bit of padding here. Okay. That just makes it a little more spaced out. Okay. So that's how you can adjust the column width and the row height. Okay, now let's go ahead and I want to add up the forecast and sales data. So come down here in cell C7, we're going to do a calculation. Now in Excel, the way to do a calculation is you have to start with an equal sign. Okay, notice if I don't use an equal sign, so I'm going to say 1 plus 2 and then hit return. It just treats that as a word. It's not actually doing the calculation. If I actually want Excel to calculate 1 plus 2, I have to say equals 1 plus 2, and then it gives me the number 3. And notice it displays the answer, but if I click on the cell up in the formula bar, it shows me the formula that I typed. Okay, so we want to do a calculation. So equals 130,000 plus 240,000 plus 25,000 plus 84,000 plus 100,000. Okay. Now I'm going to hit return. I'm going to get a message because I did something wrong here. Let me just kind of point out what I did wrong. So it's saying that there's a typo and it's suggesting a correction. Notice when I typed out these numbers, I used the comma separator. The correction is taking out the comma separators. It turns out in Excel, when you're doing a calculation, Excel doesn't like you to have comma separators. You should just type the number without the commas. Okay. So I'm going to say yes to accept the correction. Okay. And by the way, notice up here, even though I typed the comma and it displays with the comma, if I click on the number in the formula bar, you'll notice it doesn't have commas. Okay. For a number, it does not include comma separators. The comma separator is purely for display purposes. It's purely there to help me read the number more quickly and not have to figure out where the commas would go. Okay. I do want a comma separator here. So how do I get that? Well, on the home menu ribbon in the number section, you'll see this big comma. That's the comma style button. Go ahead, click on that. Okay. Now something weird just happened. I have these hashtags. When you see hashtags, what that means is there's a number in that column that's too wide for the column width. Okay. This number's too wide to display. So I can double click to the right of C. So between C and D, double click, that auto fits. And it looks like the reason that happened was because the comma style button not only puts a comma separator, it also puts in 2 decimals. Okay. I don't need decimals. These are all whole numbers. So in the number section, there's this decrease decimal button. Go ahead, click that button twice. Okay. And now I have the number. And I can update this now. I can move this back. By the way, you can right click and change the column width that way. I want to change this to 10, move it back to the column width. Okay. Now there's something weird that happened. When I used the comma separator, the comma style button, it actually moved the number over a little bit. It offset it a little bit to the left. I want it to be aligned with all of these numbers. Here's a really simple way to do this. Okay. There's a button in the home menu ribbon called the Format Painter. And what the Format Painter does is allows you to copy the formatting from one location to another. So what you would do is you click in the cell that has the format that you like, that you want to use. You would then click on the Format Painter button, and then click in the cell that you want to apply the format to. And it updates the format for that cell to match the cell that you first clicked on. Okay. And now everything's aligned perfectly. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add up the sales numbers. And I'm going to show you a different way to do this. So here I just did simple math. Here I'm going to use the sum function. And again, because I'm doing a calculation, I have to start with the equal sign. And there's a function called sum. Okay. Notice when I start typing the function name, it gives me a preview of the different functions, and I can actually sort of arrow down to the one that I want. Okay. I want the sum function, and I can click the tab button, and it selects that function. Okay. It gives me on-screen help to tell me how the function works. We're going to get more into functions later. But basically, this is just saying put the numbers in the parentheses of the things that I want to add up. Okay. So I can put the number 142,000, 235,000, 37,000, et cetera, et cetera. Another way to do this is I can use the cell references. So I'm going to go ahead and click on and drag down cells D2 through D6. And notice it actually says D2:D6. Okay. That's in Excel how you express a range of cells. So if you're using a range of cells in Excel, it's the starting cell then a colon, and then the ending cell. Okay, so we're going to sum up D2 through D6. Okay, I could type the final parentheses, but actually, if you just hit return, Excel will automatically put in that final parentheses. Okay, and notice when I use the sum function, it automatically uses the formatting from the cells that I'm summing. So just a reason that the sum function is a more versatile way to do this versus just simply doing math. Here's another really important reason that you want to use cell references, so the cell addresses, instead of using the numbers. This is something called hard coding. Hard coding the numbers basically means I'm just typing in the numbers. And here's the problem. Let's say that this was the wrong number, and it really should be 120,000. Notice it didn't update this formula. If I want to update the formula, I then have to click down here and also change 120,000. Okay, but over here, let's say that this is actually 152,000. When I hit enter or return, just notice what happens to the sum. The sum automatically updates. So when I use cell references, I only have to change the number in one cell, and any formulas or functions pointing to that cell will automatically update. Whereas if I use hard coding, that doesn't happen. Hard coding is basically just using Excel like a calculator. If I were going to do this with a calculator, this is exactly how I do it. I type in the number 120,000 plus 240,000 plus 25,000, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, no better than a calculator. But we want to actually make use of the functionality in Excel. So in general, you're not going to hard code your numbers. So I showed that to you just to make that point. Going forward, I'm always going to be using cell references, and you should too. Okay, you should get in the habit of using cell references whenever you can. Okay. Now, the last thing I want us to do is create a column called variance. So in E1, type the word variance. The variance is going to be the sales minus the forecast. Okay. So again, we're doing a calculation, so I have to put the equal sign. So equals, I'm going to click on D2 for sales, minus, and then C2 for the forecast, and then hit return. And that gives me a variance for item 1 of 32,000. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now, finish the remaining variance calculations for rows 3 through 6. And then down in E7, I'd like you to calculate the average variance for these 5 items. Okay. And the hint that I'll give you is there is a function that's called average. And the average function works exactly the same way as the sum function. Okay. So see if you can do that, and then come back to part C.